Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me. In my new series I started this year in 2016, The New World Order, Media and Press Releases. I think I'll title this one Chaos in America. So I've been paying attention to the advertisements when I check my email on Yahoo. They always have those little press releases about some topic or another. And I'm kind of seeing a pattern. Global warming, gay agenda, school shootings, some guy with a gun on a rampage here, some guy on a rampage there. All over the world these things are happening. And I am a little familiar with MK Ultra and other mind control techniques. And nothing to say about all the mind control propaganda on the TV. The boob tube, which should be the more appropriate name for the TV these days. The stuff on there are just propaganda, propaganda, propaganda. So the press releases seem to have similar repetitive topics. Gun confiscation, global warming, gay agenda, gun confiscation, global warming, some shooting in another city. Just over and over and over. So I've got a nice little stack here I'll try to go through quickly of press releases and other media documents that I printed out in my research to try to show that everything is connected and all this horrific stuff that's happening and insanity is planned by the elites, and it says it in these documents, by the way, for a new world order and a new age, and apparently, clearly, and admittedly by many people, which I shall share, it's a Luciferic satanic doctrine. Interestingly enough, the mailman just pulled up, so I paused the video to go get my mail, and another book arrived from my book reviews I do on my Freemasonry and Satanism series. And guess what this book is? The New World Order, Ralph Epperson. How appropriate is that? So anyways, the first document, Operation Summer of Chaos, exposed Obama administration and Soros, George Soros, the billionaire, I guess. Black Lives Matter plan to activate martial law before general election revealed. June 14, 2016. So apparently somebody hacked into the leader, DeRay McKinson, of Black Lives Matter, and posted some disturbing and alarming information that was on his Twitter account and his emails. So apparently the real purpose of the hack was to obtain secret information about George Soros and the Obama administration. Sponsored plot, an elaborate operation dubbed the Summer of Chaos, which is aimed at shutting down both the Democratic National Convention and the Republican National Convention in order to trigger martial law nationwide, keeping President Barack Obama in the White House beyond his allotted 2 terms under national security presidential directives. So what's really true here? I'm looking at one of the emails. Samuel, I wanted to touch base with you about the Summer of Chaos. So far we have 2,000 people being bussed in from different cities and another 6,000 to 8,000 expected to drive into Cleveland for the convention. Another email says they will not be ready for the types of crowds we are bringing in, and they will blame Trump for it, especially if we shut it down. The GOP will have to replace him. And apparently his contacts say, I will pass this info along. Good work, Sam. You never let us down, so if so important, we stop Trump. He will destroy everything we have worked so hard for, and we can't trust Hillary. She's never, and that's all I can see here. So you can go look this up and get all the details. Summer of Chaos. So just to find out some more validity about this, I went on Yahoo search and put in Summer of Chaos. And as you can see, plenty of results. To be exact, 3,500,000 results. It says here on the bottom. $3,500,000 results. There was another article that struck me. I guess these elites are getting tired or annoyed at the fact that we the people are waking up. And this guy writes, it's time for the elites to rise up against the ignorant masses. I kid you not. The BritX has laid bare the political schism of our time. It's not about the left or the right. It's about the sane versus the mindlessly angry. So I suppose when you're economically depressed and you can't afford to eat and you want to voice your opinion, you're going to be called mindlessly angry and part of the ignorant masses because you just won't lay down and die, I suppose. Today's citizen revolt in the United States, Britain, and Europe may upend politics as nothing else has in my lifetime. In the late 1960s, elites were in disarray as they are now. But back then they were fleeing from kids rebelling against their parents' world. Now the elites are fleeing from the parents. Extremism has gone mainstream. So the more that we resist the New World Order and all this satanic ritual programming they're giving us with that grand opening of that train tunnel in Switzerland. I just went on Yahoo Images and put on there the Swiss opening ceremony for the tunnel. It's all there. It's no doubt about it. Men with horns, people appearing thin-skinned clothes like they're naked, groping each other, like a big orgy. So one of the most brazen features of the BritX vote was the utter repudiation of the bankers and economists and Western heads of state who warned voters against the dangers of a split with the European Union. Prime Minister David Cameron thought the voters would defer to the near-universal opinion of experts that only show how utterly he misjudged his own people. And this guy who wrote this article, this panic is clearly displayed by CFR, Counselor on Foreign Relations, a secret organization organizing the world into this New World Order, part of the Freemasons, Illuminati, Zionist types under their control. Member James Trubb is in the article. So these elitists are getting a little upset. Here's a picture of this guy. He also marks the reason for the people's rejection of the elite's plan. Values and tradition. So apparently a lot of people would like to keep their values and their traditions. But apparently the elites don't want you to keep your values and your traditions. They have a new plan. So I looked up on Yahoo search. It's time for the elites to rise up against the ignorant masses. And I got 1,060,000 results. Salente, the war has begun. Mindlessly angry. Global elites, time to rise up against ignorant masses. CFR, Council of Foreign Relations member calls on elites to rise up against the people. Well, I think they've been attacking us for quite a while. Somebody must have not have told Mr. Trump that. Donald Trump, here's another one, says U.S. robbed by elite. These are the people who want to rise up against us, the masses. He used to be part of. So he's trying to say that he's now one of us. And he used to be part of these people who are taking us to the cleaners and trying to destroy our whole reality. Promising us some kind of new age doctrine being organized out of the United Nations, which, if anybody doesn't know, it was the Bolshevik Jewish folks and bankster Zionist Jewish folks and others who caused the overthrow of the Tsar in Russia right after World War I, and executed him and his family and children and other people. Proceeded to kill another possibly 100 million people over the next 10 or 15 years. And they created communism, and then they moved on to China, did the same thing. Hundreds of millions may be killed in China. Forcing communism, and apparently that's what they have planned for the USA and Europe and the world. So Donald Trump says he robbed, U.S. robbed by elite he used to be part of, saying that he has a plan to make America wealthy again, claiming that the country was robbed by the financial elite of which he used to be part of. And financial elite means the Rothschild, Rockefeller, Illuminati, Zionist, Jewish, and all their other people in cahoots with them, banksters, who apparently are into some dark stuff. Go look up the Bohemian Grove in California, videoed by Alex Jones, where they have a gigantic owl, and it's like a witchcraft convention, and they scream and holler and throw a baby into the fire under a being called Moloch. Apparently dress in long robes, naked, and bring in gay men for homosexual sex. And a lot of U.S. presidents and other powerful people have been photographed at the Bohemian Grove. This kind of stuff is going on everywhere, so I'm just putting two and two together. Another article here is, why are federal bureaucracies stockpiling ammunition? Why does Social Security Administration need 174,000 rounds of ammo? The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, 46,000. And Department of Homeland Security planning to do with 450 rounds of hollow point ammunition. Now let me explain about hollow point ammunition. It goes in here as a hole, and if I were to be shot and turn around, the whole back of my back would have been blown away. It enters as a hole and it exits as a gigantic hole. It's meant to cause the most damage. Now I'm thinking, this is our government, Homeland Security, buying these bullets, whether it's some foreign enemy, or apparently it's targeted at us, to want to maximize that kind of death is just, to me, sinister. It's incomprehensible from a Christian point of view. But then again, these people apparently are into this satanic Luciferic doctrine, And they are wanting some kind of huge worldwide bloodbath ritual. So it says here on this article, perhaps the most ominous sounding request for ammunition came from the Department of Homeland Security. DHS submitted a contract for the purchase of not to exceed 450 million rounds of .40 caliber hollow point ammunition over the next 5 years. Wow. So there's some notes here from people. Why are they buying, says one commenter, hollow point ammunition rather than less lethal rounds? That's what I'm thinking. If your own government's knowing there's going to be chaos and anarchy, why are they getting such lethal weaponry? Please consider that you do not target practice with lethal rounds of ammo. Anyone who owns a gun and target practices know that hollow point rounds are used for one thing and one thing only: maximum stopping force, as in deadly. For those of you who are ignorant or too stupid, HP hollow point ammo goes in small and comes out of the body really, really big. So when you own a gun, you keep hollow point rounds loaded, but when you target practice, you use the cheap stuff. You prefer to perfect your aim. These are just people who commented on that article. This other guy says, wow, that smacks of the New World Order, ordered by the Obama administration. And let me just say this, I've got the books, I've gone over the evidence. And back in the 1960s, when the hippies or people were protesting the Vietnam War and stuff like that, that's when a lot of these books were written, and concern about overpopulation and people came out. The elites back then woke up. And they realized they weren't going to be able to continue running the world the way they were doing it, because the people were waking up. So on Yahoo image site again, wanting to verify the legitimacy of this information, I put in federal agency stockpiling ammunition, and I got 3,350,000 results. All kinds of websites: InfoWars, Guns Law by State, Breitbart, Natural News, Before It's News. So it seems to me that we can say that, yes, indeed, they're preparing for some kind of assault on the people of the world. And I did mention that Bohemian Grove thing, and I know they had the meeting this year. So this is 7/21/2016. I just went to this Facebook site on the Bohemian Grove. You can go look up what happened there this year. I keep talking about it because it's kind of important when our leaders are showing up in a big bonfire under a gigantic owl like this. And doing some kind of ritual. Satanic, obviously. And I've been doing quite a bit of research on the ancient cultures and their sacrificial rituals. So this is nothing new. And I've been doing research into the other dimensions or other world. And there are these beings, angels, demons, what have you, apparently can be quite vicious and evil. And they're powerful, and they like the Kabbalah and Talmud and all that, witchcraft. They can use these beings to get these interdimensional beings to do things for them. Witchcraft. So the propaganda I keep talking about is coming and coming and coming. Lawmakers' Second Amendment applies to muskets So eliminate assault weapons. So this guy is saying here that in Washington, Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman joined other Democrats to call for the reinstatement of the federal assault weapons ban, arguing that the Second Amendment only applies to muskets. So when they drafted the Constitution and we created the United States, they only had muskets, and they said everybody had a right to be armed. But now today, when we have much more sophisticated weapons, this particular representative wants to say it doesn't apply. It only applies to those muskets. Other than the fact we know that all the federal agencies are buying ammo and hollow point bullets. And so they want us to have muskets against their hollow point bullets. So it doesn't take a genius to see through this. It's all more propaganda, and regrettably you got mindless zombies out there in the public who actually will go along with this stuff. And you'll probably hear them arguing down at the grocery store, at the deli counter. Yeah, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, doesn't apply to anything but muskets. That's what I read. This is something as a non-lawyer that I have trouble with from the very beginning. When the framers of our Constitution considered the Second Amendment, they were talking about muskets, Coleman said during a news conference outside the Capitol building on Tuesday. So what did some commenters say? Are there smart people out there or just dumb people? At the time of the Second Amendment was ratified, one commenter says, the standard military individual weapon was the Brown Bess musket, and the same muskets or more modern rifled weapons were the common civilian firearm, and there were absolutely no restrictions on private ownership of artillery. Civilians outgunned the military and the government. So clearly what the problem is whenever they're going to do whatever they're going to do to cause a food crisis, whatever, to cause martial law, to bring about the New World Order, microchipping everybody, enslaving people, making a communist nation where you don't have any property rights or anything else. I guess they would like the civilians that they're going to kill to be weaker than they are now. Hence, they have to try to get as many guns from the people. And so they will continue, as bizarre as it is on a daily basis lately, these bombings and shooting all over the world in every city. And apparently these lunatics, a lot of them are suicidal. And I'm just curious, are people so mindless and zombie-like that they believe this stuff? It's obviously orchestrated by these elites who want to rise up against we the people. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure this out. And this idiot congresswoman complains that assault weapons are weapons of war. Does she think muskets were not used in war back then? So the people keeping up with the times, and the government's keeping up with the times, plus using our tax dollars to spread some very hideous type weapons all over the United States and the world. They got these microwave transmitters on the top of the trucks, and they can aim a beam of microwave energy at the whole crowd or individual or city with the HARP systems. And who knows what all the other electronic cell towers and everything. I've gone over this many times, and we'll be going over it again as I go through my boxes of press releases and media that I have stocked away for the last 11 years. Got so much stuff. You're all getting off topic here. Don't let a bunch of corrupt thieves and lawyers in Washington strip us of any more of our rights, especially our gun rights. And more than twice as many Americans were killed last year by blunt objects, feet, than were killed by all long guns, including their falsely identified assault rifles. Long guns account for a minute fraction of the gun violence here in America. So obviously it's not about really trying to get the guns, rifles. It's because the rifles can be used like a sniper's rifle. Pages and pages of comments here if you go look up that Lawmakers' Second Amendment applies to muskets, so eliminate assault weapons. And I keep saying it's pretty clear to see what the purpose is when you look at the overall picture. And the propaganda continues. This guy writes, I know assault weapons, and you shouldn't own one. So, like I keep saying, why I'm doing these media and press releases, you go check your email, or just go on the computer, Google, Yahoo, anything. You're going to see, or pick up the New York Times and magazines, and you're going to see this propaganda. And people are going to believe it. That's the sad part. I was in first-hand combat in Vietnam. This guy says, John Butler. We used assault weapons, but they are for the military and law enforcement, not civilians. I'm a Second Amendment backer, but I support some gun restrictions. Family and friends have convinced me it's time to speak out. All the rhetoric and boasting swirling around social media about gun rights and gun control is so loud and at times irresponsible that it's becoming meaningless. I'm calling on veterans who have served in active combat, lived and almost died depending on the assault weapon strapped to your body, to speak out. We the people who have a true insight on the issue. Without wealth and connections to keep a deferment, I was drafted in the active combat for a year in Vietnam, 1967 to November 1968. During the Tet Offensive in January 68, some of the worst fighting in the war. So this guy thinks that you shouldn't have a powerful weapon. And again, when I say, when I've checked my email, there's those press releases, the article title, and another one here, and I go, there it goes again, there it goes again, there it goes again. Gay agenda, gun confiscation, global warming, gay agenda, gun confiscation, global warming, biodiversity, Black Lives Matter. All this propaganda costs a lot of money and is being controlled for a purpose, and I gotta say, it's probably not a very good purpose. Family plans to destroy stockpile of inherited guns and ammo worth millions, lawyer says. So here's a family who inherits millions of dollars worth of weapons from a relative, I suppose, who died. And no, they're not going to go ahead and sell them to a gun dealer or something and get their millions. They're going to destroy the guns. Family members set to inherit a stockpile of guns and ammunition worth millions of dollars plan to destroy the weapons and send a message, their attorney Daniel Brockman told ABC News today. Now, anybody doesn't think this is propaganda, come on. Jeffrey Lash of Pacific Palisades, California, died last summer of natural causes, but left behind a stockpile of more than 1,500 guns, 6.5 tons of ammunition, and nearly $250,000 in cash, according to a local ABC-owned station, KABC-TV. All the purchases were legally made, KABC reported. The reason Lash amassed such a collection remains a complete mystery. So you don't think that's propaganda. They'd rather go ahead and burn and destroy the guns and ammo than get their millions. Okay, America is on the verge of mass starvation. So think about this. That's what this article says, dated February 15th, 2016. So they're claiming with this drought conditions that are being created and other things, and all the fear of terrorism by these seemingly false flag, artificially created situations. California, North Carolina, Virginia, Baltimore, Boston, Ferguson, France, Germany, all over the world. Turkey, boom, 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 every day now. And they say America's on the verge of mass starvation. And people are going to come into your house to try to kill you and get your food, but they don't want you to be armed. An estimated 7 million people starved to death during the Great Depression. And amazingly, these people had food preparation skills that are basically a lost art in America today. And that's a concern. People do not know how to prepare food at all. Grow food, probably. With a staggering debt looming over the country. Now, I don't know what this staggering debt looming over the country is, but I do know that according to John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and many other books I've gone over, these elites caused this great debt so that countries would go bankrupt, so they would be forced into submission to the New World Order, controlled by the United Nations. So this is a tool they've used for hundreds, if not thousands of years. The money changers, the ones where Jesus overthrew the money changers' tables in the temple. So a staggering depth. So Prime Minister Sharon of Israel says they control America. Benjamin Netanyahu said in Fink's Bar, look this stuff up, that they hate America, they're going to destroy America. In 1913, the Rothschilds and the other banksters in cahoots with President Woodrow Wilson created the Federal Reserve. They've crashed the system 8 times. They control our politicians. They control the money supply. They can grow it or pull it back. They can lower the interest rates. They can raise them up. They have total control. Just like letting water out of a dam. You can turn the relief valve off and the dam will fill up with, and the reserve will fill up with more water. Or you can open it all the way and the water can rush out. So you can create a healthy economy, or you can pull it all back. And apparently, prior to World War I and prior to World War II, they did create economic situation where everybody was in dire straits. So they apparently do this prior to a world war. I guess it gets people in the right frame of mind, and you got to blame somebody for all the pain and suffering. So my point is, what do they say the America's debt is? 13, 18 trillion? That's probably not even including interest rates. But they spent that money by the people who own the banks, the Illuminati, the Zionist Jewish folks, the banksters, the elitists, the kings and queens, on their building world empire, not on we the people. They're not fixing our bridges and other situations. So they spend our taxpayer dollars and borrow from the Federal Reserve that they own to destroy more countries, and they say that we citizens are responsible for that debt. And I say we're not. They didn't spend it on us. They've robbed us. So hunger in America, please help. So it says here, the Obama administration makes a bad situation worse. The Black Lives Matter have been busy trying to illegally seize every farm. This is serious business here. And every ranch that it can in the West. At one time, I wrote that out of 52 ranchers who lived and operated near Cleveland Bundy's ranch, 51 of those ranchers were forced to move off their lands. With the stroke of his pen, Obama has total absolute control over all food where his EO 13603 states. So they're even passing legislation so when they do have this martial law thing, they can take over all farms, all food supplies, everywhere. Food resources, meaning all commodities, products, simple, mixed, and compound, or complements of such commodities or products that are capable of being ingested by either human beings or animals, irrespective of their uses to which such commodities or products may be put, at all stages of processing from the raw commodity to the products thereof of venable form for human and animal consumption. Food resources also means potable water, packaged in commercially marketable containers, all starches, sugars, vegetable, animal, marine fats, oils, seed, cotton, hemp, flax, fiber, but does not mean any such material after it loses its identity as an agricultural commodity or agricultural product. Food resource facilities means plants, machinery, vehicles, including on-farm, and other facilities required for the production, processing, distribution, storage, including cold storage of food resources, of the domestic distribution. So they are ready to take over all of the food supply, factories, everything, farms. Clearly communists. Conclusion: this mandates arising out of Executive Order 13603 is exactly what is happening in Venezuela. And I printed out a bunch of pictures on Venezuela, what's going on down there, and it is horrific. A country with those oil reserves and gold reserves and diamond reserves and so much more, it is clearly an intentional denial of the people of any resources to sustain their life. This is what they did in China. This is what they did in Russia. This is what they do. They really want to kill off the people. It is not a case of kinda, sorta, or could be. It is a case of this is exactly what is happening right now in Venezuela. In tomorrow's article, I will draw an unmistakable parallel to the mass starvation that is just beginning to happen in the United States right now. So, I might ask this question, if you're watching this video: do you have a closet with some food in it? Like, take $100 and go to Sam's Club and get a 8-pack of corn and beans and peas, like $6 a box, case, and other things. Do you? Dried soups. I mean, you'd be surprised what just $100 could get you. $200 or $300, and you've got a lot of stuff. And if you keep it for 6 months or a year, like right now is July, 6 months from now, and I've done this twice already. If nothing happens, wonderful, I spent a couple $100, but I take it down to one of the food shelters and give it all away while it's still in date, and I restock my closet. So, one, if nothing happens, I get to help the food shelter. And two, if something does happen, I got enough food for a couple months. Case of canned chicken, case of canned tuna, canned tomato soups or whatever, chicken soups. Some basics, a bottle, $1.50 gallon of bleach, some toothpaste, toilet paper. Things that are kind of important you don't think about. Aspirin, pain reliever, basic medical supplies, weapon, photo cell you can put on your roof, and a little cable so you can charge up your phone if there's no electricity. Thinking about going and buying a small Honda gas generator, because it wasn't too long ago that the power went out here in North Carolina about 7 o'clock in the evening, didn't come back till 11 o'clock the next day. And it occurred to me that I was not prepared, as much as I thought I was prepared. Do you have candles? Some oil lamps. Just saying. I did buy a propane stove, and I've got half a dozen or more of those little canisters of propane. So I could cook food, I could boil water, I could make coffee. Coffee's on sale when you go shopping. You know, it's buy one, get one free. So the average is like $3 or $4 each. Buy 2 of them and throw it in your little storage thing. Sugar, salt. Alright, some commenter writes on that article: Agenda 21 and the UN New Agenda 2030. The destruction of our economy, the destruction of the health care system, gun confiscation, borders wide open, destruction of property rights, privacy rights, the UN's New Agenda 2030. So I keep getting this stuff from Tom DeWeese, and he's always trying to get the word out to people about Agenda 21. You can go look that up. Very important. There's the guy. You can see he sends me, it's my name on there, hello Rick. So I get the newsletters. He's fighting the battle. Here's some other stuff here. International policy is currently directing local communities to enforce cutbacks on water by as much as 75%. Do you think Obama's healthcare policy is his brainchild? Of course not. The guy's not a doctor. In the manual, I show you how its direct connection to sustainable development and the true purpose behind the planned destruction of America's healthcare system. I will show you how global warming is the greatest hoax ever played on man. I'll show you why sustainabilists cannot drop the discredited issue for fear of losing all of their demands on Agenda 21. How language is being manipulated to control policy. The threat we face is not a Republican or Democratic issue. This is Tom DeWeese, Agenda 21. The ruling principle that will completely reorganize our society. The 3 E's of control. The threat of precautionary principle and how it will destroy our economy. How public-private partnerships are destroying free enterprise. How the politically based radical element movements use fear on environmental changes, damage and as camouflage as they work to transform the American system of government, justice, and economics. This is all the New World Order stuff. To bring about Professor Higgins, Jewish Professor Higgins, and his book, The Jewish Empire, and I've done that book. I'll have to re-release that. Alright, gets even crazier. 11 hardcore martial law characteristics. We're seeing this more and more often. Right now in the Republican RNC with Trump speaking and all kinds of other people in Cleveland. And it's like a SWAT team. It's like martial law is already here. 18 hardcore martial law characteristics, some of them already in action. Martial law is defined as when the military government engages in the suspension of ordinary law. The term martial law is thrown around quite a bit these days, and the elements of martial law often gets lost in the conversation. Government critics maintain that this administration is merely looking for an excuse to put the country into total state of martial law and begin to act upon their various enemies of the state list to ultimately suspend the Constitution. I believe this is all happening. Martial law characteristics, hardcore. Hardcore martial law contains the following elements. Mass roundup of political dissidents. Are you a political dissident? Will you surrender your arm? Will you take the mark of the beast, the chip? Dusk to dawn curfews. This will destroy economically the United States, so things will just get progressively worse and escalate, which is what they intend. Rationing of essential resources. The seizing of personal assets such as food and water. Control over all food and water. The prohibition of weapons of any kind, including guns, knives, and chemicals, which can be turned into explosives. The confiscation of property, homes, and businesses. Arrest without due process. Massive paper pleas checkpoints. Forced relocation. Forced conscription into various labor camps. So people will be assigned to labor camps. You won't have a choice. And if you resist, boom. And you won't have a gun, so they can just shoot you. Outlawing of free speech. The installation of massive surveillance. The total control or elimination of religion. Control of the media. This is all the things that happened in Russia and China when they instigated communism. And many other revolutions instigated by these same people who are doing this with this Luciferic satanic religion. Control of the media, executions without due process. So anybody can be executed anytime. Total suspension of the Constitution. Just how many of these intrusive government policies are in place? The answer will surprise most readers. How many elements of hardcore martial law does the U.S. possess? Also read, the elite are in a panic, buying up supplies in a rush. So the elites in their mansions are stocking up. They're not going to be disarmed. The globalists are not yet rationing essential elements in totality. However, Executive Order 13603 gives the President the authority to do so. I find it concerning that Obama has derailed the Keystone Pipeline and is shutting down coal plants. And there is the threat Obama recently made to implement his cap and trade through executive order. This is a prelude to the control of all energy. FEMA regulations limit the amount of food and water one can store to a total of 3 days. So I guess if I got 3 months worth of stuff stocked up, am I a criminal to think that there could be a hurricane or a power plant or an attack in a war? The Chinese, the Russians, or somebody attacking the U.S.? Nuclear war. Of course it should be. Our ancestors always canned food and stocked up for the whole winter. The NDAA allows arrest without due process, so this is already in place in 2006. The Civilian Inmate Labor Program grants the government the ability to forcibly conscribe any citizen, healthy or not, with no age qualifications into various labor camps and even into the military. For nearly 20 years, many of the alternate media have known about the massive surveillance programs conducted by NSA and several other alphabet soup agencies. The church could have served the purpose of opposing the creeping criminalization of the hardcore implements of martial law, but we know the churches, most of them have sold us out. I guess if you're going to get a free ticket into the New World Order, you just sell off the citizens. Come on! What will it be like? The 3 stages of U.S. martial law and the signs to look for before it happens. So I suppose when it does happen, it'll happen really quick, overnight. Some event. Maybe at the Republican National Convention and the Democrat National Convention, there'll be big clashes of mobs of people and more shootings in cities in Austin and San Bernardino and Chicago, Detroit, Savannah, Atlanta, Orlando. And President Obama will say, I've had enough. Martial law. All people have to turn in all your weapons. And then the resistance will begin. Could it play out that way? Meanwhile, hate to give you more bad news. Meanwhile, American atheists are on the rise. They have radically different visions of the future. This is what all this is about. This is a cosmic battle. This is between good and evil. Make no bones about it. Just look at the last few years in the Super Bowl halftime shows. The Emmys, the Grammys, the BET Awards, the Olympic openings, that tunnel in Switzerland, statue of the goddess of destruction Shiva out in front of CERN in Geneva, which is the long-time homeland for the Illuminati, and apparently Frankenstein myth. And so much more about Geneva. That'll be it for another video. Reason Rally 2016 believes science can cure the social ills of religion. Social ills of religion. But it isn't sure what a healthy society will look like. June 29th, 2016. Peter, who has a temporary tattoo of Anarchy A on his upper arm, is ready for the age of reason. And it says here, he effing loves science. So I like all these atheists in their language. Why would he use a word like that, effing? Or he loves logic. He says it's the only thing he's interested in. It's the only thing he's interested in is logic. And meanwhile, they're murdering all those Arabs in Syria. He has come a long way from Madison, Wisconsin to Washington, D.C. to hear the nation's foremost atheists tell an expected crowd of 30,000 the good news. We're at the turning point in American life. Religion, the long, stubborn source of our national ills, is finally dying away. Well, I hate to tell this, Peter, but I do not think so. And I know the government has purchased 35 guillotines and spread them out throughout the United States. Biblically prophesied, a lot of Christians will resist this New World Order and take the mark of the beast, and hence the preferred method of solving that problem is to execute them by beheading them. Got a horrific day in front of us all here, seems like. Submit to the devil or have your head chopped off. But first, they must disarm us and convince everybody of all these things like global warming and sustainability and biodiversity and people diversity and pansexualism, transgenderism, bisexuality, homosexuality, pedophilia, and so much more. Sodomy. What did God do in the past to the Sodomites? And there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that shows that God in the Bible says it's wrong. And so I suppose they want to say that the Bible is now actually the God of the Bible. I've read this and I'm going to read it again. Is actually the evil one. And the Lucifer satanic dude who was cast out of heaven was misjudged and is really the benevolent, loving beast, demon. And we all should worship him. An opportunity for the quarter of Americans who are atheists to stand up and be counted. So they've been using a lot of propaganda over a lot of years to get people to believe this garbage. For example, 2008, I was driving up the Interstate 95 from Florida to Maine, where I had purchased some land and was going to relocate, trying to escape the insanity of the world. Really. And on the radio at 2 o'clock in the morning, driving down the interstate, they had the talk radio shows, and overwhelmingly the people were against gay marriage. 30 to 60, something like that. 1/3 for, 2/3 against. And so I would distinctly remember that talk show host saying, well, I guess it's never going to go anywhere. But he was mistaken. Out of the United Nations and the taxpayer dollars that they control, billions were spent on the propaganda convincing the American public that homosexuality is actually wonderful. You can't stop love. Do you see the gay parades and how perverted and sick what they do at those parades and celebrations in Tel Aviv and everywhere else? I don't think there's anything about love or gay or homosexual about that. It's just a freak show. So anyways, 2008, 1/3 of the people were for gay marriage and 2/3 were against. And remember, it took them a long time to get to 1/3 for, and this free love and everything else. But I noticed in 2009 it inched up a couple more points, from 33 to 36. Two more, another year it was 38, another year it was 40, another year it was 41, 42. And finally it passed 51% for gay marriage. And then everybody says, overwhelmingly the people are for gay marriage. Not realizing that it was all mind control propaganda. People with very sophisticated knowledge of psychology and all that, and issues like false flags and having some gay guy get beat up and making sure it made all the headlines. And now they want to lower the age of consent for sex with children. And some people want to eliminate it altogether, and universities have published reports, professors or whatever, they're saying it's normal for a guy to have affections of that kind for children. I think it's a $250,000 fine in New York if you mislabel a transgender. So if you call him her when she's actually a he, and they prefer to be a she, and you don't get it, they could fine you and probably cause a lot of problems. Just saying, it's all propaganda. The same thing with the global warming, gun confiscation, gay agenda, and destroying Christianity, trying to demonize Christianity as bigots and haters. I got books written in the last 100 years. They had hearings in the 1920s about the communists who, before Congress, admitted they were infiltrating everything and bent on destroying the churches and all that, and were infiltrating the churches, joining to be priests and ministers, with the intent of bringing about this satanic, demonic, New Age reality. I get worn out with talking sometimes. So it says here, when you read the headlines about the rise of the so-called nuns, people who believe in nothing, people who don't consider themselves part of a religion, that's what's most referring to the Shutters, wrote Emma Green in The Atlantic. They might be intensively spiritual or perfectly apathetic about faith, but for some reason or another they don't self-identify themselves with definitely atheism. It's Luciferianism. They're using the atheism to get people to give up their religion. This is just my highlighted portions. There are no denouncements of religion, only its consequences. There are no attendees holding signs that say ban God. There's nothing quite so pointed this time, but without this animating antagonism, what is left? When David Garcia, the president of the LGBT Los Angeles, speaks of how many young people are hurt and made homeless by reactionary religious sentiment. So in the Bible it says don't do these things, and we people who believe in God and Jesus believe we shouldn't do them. They're going to call us haters and bigots and everything. Make it probably a crime. Confiscate Bibles. This thing with this satanic, Luciferic worship, clearly seen people doing this in the news, and the famous people doing this, and the politicians all doing devil signs, and so much more. Hunger Games movie, Divergent, they're telling everybody. Larry Drecker, when he finally takes the stage, tells the assembled that Reason Rally is our wake-up call to the religious right, letting them know that if they want to desecrate the dreams of our founding fathers, they'll have to go through us. Another sits at the back on a bicycle, shirtless, with 2 megaphones, and shouting, "Jesus, he's alive." Somebody makes reference to a fairy tale for adults, but surprise, it's evolution. Just reading the notes here on this thing. Another guy writes here, a man tells another that the God of the Bible is a comic book villain whose moral code is incoherent. The evangelizer counters, how do you atheists know right from wrong? Scientifically, we can measure harm. How? We can figure out when things harm people. We can study it. Neither thinks to ask what we might consider harmful in the first place. Well, this New Age religion of Aleister Crowley is do as thou wilt. And the murdering and raping women and sex with children, raping them, and stealing is not to be considered a sin. You have a right to your liberty to do whatever you want. So you think there's some kind of big plan with some spiritual demonic beings who want to destroy our world, God's creation? It appears so. I met in the shade a middle-aged woman named Samantha. She got a sign that says, I'm secular and I vote, and ready for Hillary pen. She isn't debating anyone, she tells me. She gets enough of that on the internet. Like I said, here I am going about my day, and I see these different media, press releases, documents. A full quarter of Americans now live openly without God. So 25% are without God. So 75% of us are still with God. But they want to say now the battle's all over and we're all haters and bigots and worshiping comic book characters named Jesus and God and all that. The pews become empty. The temples go cold. Superstition gives way to a purely rational politics. Peter is ecstatic and Samantha too. The war is over. But the reasons of both could not be answered. Alright, so they say there's none of this stuff going on. Then we have, according to this document, a lot of people haven't been paying attention. They did, I think, erect in Times Square, New York, and in London, a temple of Baal, B-A-A-L. But it's the devil, demon. So they got these arches. And later on I found out there was actually 1,000 of them. And this was all sponsored by the United Nations, which has an occult meditation room and other symbols, by the way. UNESCO. So they manufactured these imitation arches with the columns, temples of Baal. 1,000 of them. They're going to put them all over the world and have these ceremonies. But God and Jesus are comic book characters, but this devil thing apparently is not a comic book character, but somebody to be loved and worshipped. Just like the statue of Baal that they wanted to put on the state building in Oklahoma, and it wound up in Detroit and has two little children, one on each side, looking up at this horned beast in awe. And it had a celebration. I looked at some of the photos, and again, it was another freak show. Like a witches' convention mixed with the gay pride parade. Everybody was just a freak. Just like in the grand opening of that tunnel in Switzerland and that ritual they had, everybody was a freak. Even the politicians that were there and the newscasters were befuddled by the whole thing and going, "What is this? It's insane." That's what they were saying. So it isn't just me. You have the horn guy coming down from the ceiling and all the people half naked groping each other, and it's just very bizarre. You got to go look up the pictures. And I believe most people with common sense will say, "What the heck is that? And what's with this temple of Baal, the devil, all over 1,000 of them all over the world? Statue of Shiva in front of CERN. Satanic rituals at Super Bowl halftime shows. Madonna, even with the horns. Bams. Katy Perry. Lady Gaga. And so many more. Miley Cyrus, Bieber, all these people. Listen to the lyrics of the songs. Eurovision, like the American Idol singing contest. Eurovision in Europe. The winner was, in 2014, Conchita Wurst. Do you know what Conchita means? It's a female part. Wurst, sausage, a male part. So this person with the head looking like Jesus, long hair in the beard, and a silky dress like a female on the bottom. So androgynous, which is what Baal is, the devil's androgynous. Singing the song Phoenix Rising with the words in it are, "You can't stop us." You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to put this together. So they're trying to put the Temple of Baal, March 27, 2016. This is all current. Erected in Times Square, and it was a big uproar about it. And finally they said, we'll put the Temple of Palmyra. And the Temple of Baal is in Palmyra, Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, over there. So the Temple of Palmyra is the same thing as the Temple of Baal. And I didn't know this, but apparently in front of the United Nations building in Geneva, again, is a statue of Zeus. So wait a minute. Well, where's Jesus? Where's God and all this? We got Zeus there, but Zeus is okay. But Jesus and God are comic book demonic characters, according to these atheists and people who want to bring about the New World. And it says right here, while I'm reading this, child sacrifice and bisexual orgies. Remember the Bohemian Girl, that Alex Jones video that I showed earlier in this video? Child sacrifice and bisexual orgies were common practices at the altars of Baal. And now they are putting up a monument to worship of this false god in the heart of our most important city. I realize that the headlines of this article sound like it must be false, but it is actually completely true. The Temple of Baal, also known as the Temple of Bel, was a world-famous landmark that was located in Palmyra, Syria. Sorry about that. It wasn't Lebanon or Israel, it was Syria, which they're bombing to smithereens right now. In August 2015, the temple was destroyed by ISIS. ISIS is a creation of the NATO, U.S. Pentagon, as well as Al-Qaeda. And they're using that, calling them the Islamic State. So they're creating these you talk about comic book characters. These ISIS and Al-Qaeda are actually mercenaries paid for by the Pentagon, Israel, the Zionists, the elites, the banksters, to create all this chaos in the Middle East, as so they can justify taking those jets and bombing the smithereens out of the Arabs in their towns and their cities, and mass murdering all the people, and dispersing them all over Europe and the United States and the world, to tell us that we have to have a diverse population. You can't have a town in the United States that might be predominantly white, because they'll be so bright they'll blind you. Apparently, the one politician recently published a selfie of him and the government aides in the Capitol building, and some people noticed, wow, they're all white people. It's so bright I can't see. And I saw another commercial for a franchise hair salon. 3 people, 2 girls and a guy. And I thought to myself, man, they're all white. 2 white guys, 2 white girls, and a white guy. Where's the brown or black or red person in that picture? It's just this stupid propaganda. So the temple destroyed by the temple by ISIS in Palmyra, Syria, and most of the world recoiled in terror. Most of the world recoiled in terror because the demonic temple was destroyed. I didn't recoil in terror. I didn't even know about it. And the loss of a cultural heritage site. So they're really worried about the Temple of Baal, Satan, Lucifer, the demon. But they want to destroy all the cultural heritage of Jesus and God and Christianity. And apparently Islam and the Muslims, that religion too. Huh. You see where their priorities are. Talk about a Luciferic conspiracy. In an attempt to preserve history, 2 exact replicas of the 50-foot arch that stood at the entrance to the temple will be erected on April 2016 in Times Square. When I first came across this story, I could hardly believe it. But this is not just some internet rumor. This was reported in the New York Times. Of course, most non-religious Americans don't understand who Baal, nor do they really care who Baal was. But the truth is that many of the elements of ancient Baal worship are being mirrored in our society in 2016. That's what I keep saying. The following is an excerpt from an article by Mr. Matt Barber. Realistic, ritualistic Baal worship in some looked a little like this. Adults would gather around the altar of Baal. Infants would then be burned alive as sacrificing offered to the deity. So the Bohemian Grove, where our politicians have been photographed, that they have a meeting there every year in the tall redwood forest in California. They do this, they call it the cremation of care. The Talmudic Jewish people for 1,000, 2,000 years were caught over and over and over again of abducting a little boy, maybe a girl, I don't know, and puncturing them with needles and buckets underneath them catching the blood, which they would drink, part of their satanic rituals. And then, of course, over the past 2,000 years, some of these Jewish people would get caught, Talmudic Jews. Not to be confused with the Jews who believe in the Bible and worship the true God. Speaking of that, something else weird happened to me yesterday. I went to text a message to a friend of mine. She sent me a video, and the message I was sending back that had the word Jesus in it. This cell phone, you know how when you type in a word and the computer on your cell phone tries to correct it, would not let me type in Jesus. I was flabbergasted. You know, if you type in where and you haven't put an extra R and it fixes it or it gives you a suggestion. I repeatedly tried to put in Jesus in my sentence I was sending to her. And finally, I know how to trick the phone. I put in Jesus, and then I didn't put a space. I put some dots, periods. So the computer didn't catch it, and I was able to send it. But the word separate alone, Jesus, this phone would not acknowledge it as a legitimate word. Believe it or not, try it. I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. So they have this, adults would gather around the altar of Baal. Infants would then be burned alive as sacrificial offering to the deity, amid horrific screams and the stench of charred human flesh. Congregants, men and women alike. All right, one of my neighbors stopped out here in front of my yard. Say hello. So amid horrific screams and the stench of charred human flesh, congregants, men and women alike, you can't make this stuff up. I don't even know if I should read it, would engage in bisexual orgies. The ritual of convenience was intended to produce economic prosperity by prompting Baal to bring rain for the fertility of Mother Earth. I think I'm just going to have to show you that, because you probably won't believe it. Pause your computer and read it. So, people don't believe. Alex Jones sneaks into the Bohemian Grove in California. It's every year when they do it. Like the Bilderberg meeting, is a lot of people protesting this insanity in the world. All right, moving on here. If you are not religious, I know that all of this must sound very strange. But there are occultists that take this stuff deadly serious. And nothing this large gets space in either the Times Square or the Trafalgar Square by accident. So, you know, to get something like this set up in Times Square or Trafalgar Square in London, I suspect, it's not by accident. These elites have control. There are very powerful people out there who made this happen. And perhaps someone should ask them what their intentions are. We know what their intentions are. They're going to destroy our reality. Enslave the people. Mass murder. A worldwide bloodbath. A ritual. Hell on earth. 40 thoughts on April 2016. The Temple of Baal will be erected in Times Square in New York City. Congress shall make no laws respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Well, apparently tax dollars and stuff were spent to put the Temple of Baal, the devil, and I keep saying this. Apparently, the separation of church and state is Christianity and decency and state, but not sacrificing and children and homosexual religion and Lucifer, the devil, and state. That's okay. It's okay for the devil and Lucifer to control our politicians, and all those people are in cahoots and go to California, the Bohemian Grove, have a gigantic owl with a burning fire in the belly, throwing in a baby, screeching and hollering, and shipping in gay men for these politicians and CEOs and leaders of the world, dressed in long robes to have homosexual sex. No women allowed. While the founding fathers of the U.S. were brilliant men, they assumed that following generations would be as well, so vastly underutilized this phrase. No, these our founding fathers assumed that we would be brilliant too, but apparently the world is getting stupider. Zombies prevail. Flee from Babylon, run for your lives. Do not be destroyed because of her sins. You can come to Poland. We are free from this satanic agenda. Well, New York City is called the Sodom on the Hudson. Another commenter says, Nimrod was the world order. He made a list, NSA, of those who favored him and those who would be sacrificed. So anybody who is favoring this Luciferic, homosexual, sodomite, pansexual, pedophilia, murder, robbery, rape of children and women, you don't have anything to fear. Samarius, his mother, queen lover, whore of Babylon. So Nimrod was lover with his mother, the queen, a whore of Babylon, is resurrected by Nimrod by spilling blood on the innocent to fertilize Nimrod, born as an evergreen tree. That is why the colors red and green are central to the pagan ritual you mindlessly celebrate. As Horus is an alias for Nimrod, the all-seeing eye on the US $1 bill, he became the sun god, and if you look at the all-seeing eye on the $1 bill, you'll see the sun's rays behind it, who laid lowest in the sky on December 25th, so every year he is reborn by the unsuspecting sheep. So they gave us a Christmas, Jesus' birthday on the 25th, which is actually not his birthday, but it's the sun going to its furthest point and then starting to rise again. Get it? The sun is rising. Jesus was born. The sun was risen. You have little knowledge concerning the occult. Yes, Nimrod and Santa are one and the same. There are many stone carvings showing Nimrod holding a spruce tree and reindeer. Long beards, one and the same. So I have no doubt that they've got everybody celebrating Christmas mistakenly. They've used so much more deception on us. The fact is, people have been gay ever since humans originated. And people have been murdering people since humans originated. We don't want to support that, do we? And it is never going to go away. And the more you demonize it, the more it will be forced into the fringe. You will be forced into the fringe. Alright, here we go. Baalbek Temple. Human sacrifice worship of Baal. More on Baal here when I was doing my research. Human sacrifice, including child sacrifice, as worship to the god Baal, B-A-A-L, at the Baalbek Temple. The Greek writer Homer told how the mighty god, sky god Zeus, remember Zeus is the statue out in front of the United Nations in Geneva, cast thunderbolts on the earth and tumbled the walls of Troy with his earthquakes. The inhabitants of Baalbek feared Baal. This god was their name for Zeus, also known as Jupiter or Ammon. Humans were sacrificed in an attempt to pacify him and prevent huge destructive earthquakes. They believed by their actions they could control and manipulate the gods. Not God, but the gods, plural. So beginning with the founding of the Phoenician colony at Carthage in about 814 BC before Christ, mothers and fathers buried their children who were sacrificed to Baal. The priest beat a drum sounding flutes, lyrics and tambourines. So they were making all this music to drown out the cries of the anguished parents. The father could not hear the voice of his son. His heart might not be removed. So apparently, more of the old is going to become the new. They're going to bring back this horrific religion, and they're going to have a huge blood sacrifice on planet Earth to appease or please some demonic being. Alright, then later the remains were collected and placed in special small urns when they were burning their children. The urns were then buried in funeral necropolis. Recent excavations discovered a great number of these urns, proving the accusation of child sacrifice was true. And they're trying to rebuild King Solomon's temple, which is all prophecy and also part of a big mission of the Freemasons. More crazy news here. I'm almost done, I think, here. But the exclusive Navy secretly conducting electromagnetic warfare training on Washington roads. You're not going to believe it. So they got these trucks with these microwave transmitters. Imagine sticking your head in a microwave. Without public notification of any kind, the U.S. Navy has secretly been conducting electromagnetic warfare testing and training on public roads in western Washington state for more than 5 years. The Navy has likely been driving mobile electromagnetic warfare emitters, conducting electromagnetic warfare training in the Olympic National Forest and on public roads on Washington's Olympic Peninsula since the year 2010. Your government. What the Navy is doing, we have no idea because they don't tell us. As Truthout previously reported, the Navy itself has produced a medical study showing the exposure of electromagnetic radiation caused a myriad of human health problems. So they know that all this radiation causes health problems, including coronal damage, eye damage, tubular degeneration of the testicles, degeneration, brain heating, sterility, altered penile function, death, cranial nerve disorder, seizures, convulsions, depression, insomnia, chest pain, and even sparking between dental fillings. Other reports by the U.S. Air Force and NASA, medical doctors, and scientific publications confirm these and other deleterious health effects that would result from the Navy's electromagnetic weapon arsenal, in addition to a large-scale negative impact on birds, aquatic life, and other biota. As Truthout previously reported, the Navy intends to conduct widespread electromagnetic training across much of the Olympic Peninsula that would entail flying as many as 153 jets down to 1,200 feet above the ground in 2,900 training exercises lasting up to 16 hours per day, 260 days per year with no end in sight. So they're going to fly jets at a low elevation and microwave people as part of their training and testing program. There's so much more to read on that article. I'm not even going to try. I believe anybody can use their imagination and agree that this is pretty horrific, that they would be doing this to us. But I will read some of the people's comments. Another example of the military fighting for our freedom. Alright, what did this guy say? This guy says this on one of the comments, and I've had other people tell me this, and I've seen videos about it, and apparently a lot of people are TIs, short for targeted individuals. I am being targeted with a concentrated, directed energy, possibly microwave, in the form of a narrow beam or a laser, multiple times throughout the day. I will experience a painful burning sensation in the top of my head, or the painful sensation of a pinned nail entering the top of my head, both of which are followed by a pain within my head and a feeling of sickness and weakness throughout my body. And there's been a lot of people testifying about this. These satellite-directed energy weapons are a serious threat to our democracy and human rights on our planet. They are silent and invisible and therefore not easily detectable. They employ laser technology that will allow their operators to target specific individuals without detection by others, even when in close proximity to the targeted individual. So they can target anybody. And I might add, in my own case, I don't think it's my imagination, but some days I just feel that some force is harming me. Go with your intuition. This guy says, wow, so sorry to hear that. In my research, I have come across many people like you. Most vocal of which perhaps is an independent scientist, Lorraine Morant, a former nuclear physicist and researcher at Berkeley University. She is a whistleblower and has been targeted for that reason. If this is any consolation, there are important whistleblowers breaking their rank in just about every sphere of society you can imagine. Government, military, scientific, educational. People are beginning to pay attention, experiencing crisis of conscience, and are no longer afraid to speak, such as yourself. Now, I believe I'm a spiritual being. Yes, they can kill me. I believe that Jesus did come here to earth, as in the Bible says, and preached, treat your fellow man like you want to be treated. I believe the Pharisees over there were jealous of his gaining popularity, so they had the Roman leader crucify him. And Pontius Pilate said, I don't want to crucify Jesus. I don't want that on my head. And all the Jews in the background back then, Hebrews, Pharisees, cried out in unison, let it be on our heads and our children's heads. So for a couple thousand years, I guess it's been on the Jewish people's heads, and they hate Christians and they hate Christianity, and they're bent on destroying it. They did kill God's son, if you believe the Bible, when God went up to the mountain with two of his disciples, and there were ghost-like beings standing there, Moses and Isaiah, long dead. And the two disciples said, would you like us to leave while you talk to these beings? And all of a sudden a dark cloud came over them, and a voice said, this is my son, of whom I am proud. Listen to him. So here's God speaking from a cloud, telling the disciples to listen to Jesus. And then if you use my cell phone, you try to text a message about Jesus, it won't recognize it as a word. Try it on your cell phone. Sounds like the federal government is guilty of domestic terrorism to me, one of this commenter says, with these electromagnetic transmitters. More and more military training, exercises off bases, and usual bombing ranges. There are people who think this is all right. Don't forget, we had that Black Lives Matter situation, Day of Rage, recently, organized on a Friday. And obviously the emails and Twitters were hacked, and it was all planned. So they planned it for the Day of Rage. They're planning it for the Republican National Convention. They're planning it for the Democratic National Convention. So these people who are doing these crisis actor shootings or actual mind control and making people go mad and start shooting at people, these forces that control our world are not going to stop. They've come too far. They're going to bring about the big event. So I do these videos. I'm just saying, when it happens, just know what happens. And giving up your weapons, it's going to be like a death sentence. Alright, any more comments here I want to read? One guy says here, how about I stick your head in a microwave and see how you like it? So when they do aim these weapons at us, it's like sticking your head in the microwave. This so-called report and these comments would be funny if they weren't so sad. So this whole conversation is just a little spooky. Moving on, any more comments? The Department of Defense has many non-public access test ranges to test their EW weapons systems outside of prying eyes and out of reach of lunatic conspiracy theorists. So we're all lunatics if we don't like the Temple of Baal being set up in your town. Alright, so they want to make a new world order and control everything. Well, the truth of the matter is they already do control everything. Does one super corporation run the global economy? And study claims it could be terrifyingly unstable. So, the University of Zurich study proves that a small group of companies, mainly banks, wields huge power over the global economy. The study is the first look at all 43,060 transnational corporations and the web of ownership between them, and created a map of 1,318 companies at the heart of the global economy. So these people have spent a lot of years getting themselves put into position. The financial collapse of 2008 shows such tightly knit networks can be very unstable, and they want to make it an even more gigantic controllable thing and microchip everybody and kill off a huge portion of the population so they can have their utopia. And apparently they're into sacrificing people and some kind of Baal demonic religion that they want to bring about. The Council of Foreign Relations, another one of those Bohemian, Bilderberger group types, Illuminati, Freemasonic, people doing things in secret, pushes end to sovereignty at UN's Doha Climate Summit. So they're using the climate problem, global warming, as an excuse to try to end sovereignty of nations, and they're going to have to police and enslave everybody to resolve the problem of global warming and biodiversity and sustainability and hatred and bigotry coming from Christians who believe we should treat others how we want to be treated, and we believe you shouldn't be raping women and children and sacrificing people. But gosh, why not? Liberty, freedom, justice for all. The UN Climate Summer at Doha, Qatar is in the second week. This is December 2012. Headed for completion on Friday, December 7th. Most analysts and observers expect little in the way of major developments. I just looked this one up because I was aware that they're trying to have the United Nations take over the control of the United States military and in control of our country, as well as they're doing that all over the world. So I wanted to go back and research it. With the world's economy in shambles, they're making it in shambles. Remember, they control everything we just read. So they could make everything okay if they wanted to. And nearly all national governments awash in debt. They created that. John Perkins in his book, and many others they have, The Economic Hitman, they were going all over the world getting nations to borrow money. They knew they would fail and bring about themselves under the control of the United Nations and the banksters. Fundamentally, as Professor Higger said in his book, The Jewish Utopia, and the Protocols of Zion, and many other books I have, the satanic people who sacrifice people, demonic religion, want to rule the world. And they've been assassinating people like President Kennedy, and all kinds of whistleblowers, and targeting people with microwave weapons. And that one demolition expert in the Netherlands, Denny, you can look this up, when shown a picture of the video of Building 7, which wasn't hit by a plane, the third building that fell in 9/11, Denny said, that's demolition, clearly. Well, he was dead within days. A horrific accident. I don't know how many days, maybe it was weeks or whatever, but he died right after. Some things I can't remember exactly. But the videos are on YouTube. You can go look it up and get the details. There is diminishing incentive for politicals to spend scarce public funds on the much hyped hypothetical future threats posed by global warming, especially when there are very real, tangible issues demanding immediate attention and funding. So the global warming issue, even Trump says, is a hoax. And the Council of Foreign Relations and all these other organizations want to cede control of the United States, and I'm sure Canada and Mexico and all the other countries of the world, over to the United Nations, who, with UNESCO, sponsored those temples of Baal, and also is sponsoring the gay agenda and all the other sexual deviancy, and the gun confiscation propaganda, and all the crisis actors and events all over the world, and probably the same folks who caused 9/11. And from my other books and all my reviews, they did fabricate and create the situation to start World War I, World War II, and many of the other wars. If all these books and authors of bestseller books I've been going over are true, the picture is a little clearer to me after 11 years. Of course, the CFR, Council of Foreign Relations, insiders have learned that they cannot always rely on their propaganda organs to produce sufficient public support. Propaganda organs to produce sufficient public support in a timely manner to accomplish their goals. They must also have the people, their people, on the inside. And like I said, in the 1920s, plus or minus. And Henry Ford talked a lot about it in that newspaper he purchased, the Dearborn Independent. And now there's some books you can get, The International Problem, The International Jew, The World's Biggest Problem, Henry Ford. You can look it up on used book sites. And there's 4 volumes. I just ordered number 1. I had 2, 3, and 4. But I wanted to complete my collection. So the book actually is coming from Britain. I think I got it for $15. But he tells all, Henry Ford, the automaker, about these people during World War I that were coming over here. They had set up all kinds of camps all over Europe after the Russian Revolution, when they had killed the Tsar and his family and took over that country, and were in the process of killing 25 to 100 million Christians and other good people, destroying the Christian churches but not the Jewish temples. But they had all these training camps all over Europe to ship all those Jewish folks into New York and the United States, and they were causing tons of problem. Well, anyways, we all know that they control Hollywood, the pornographic industry, the liquor industry, the movie theater industry, and publishing industries, and many other things since then. And it was all a plot and a plan. And of course, they were financed by these elitists who control the United States Federal Reserve since 1913. So they had unlimited money supply at our expense. And when they used all that money that they borrowed from the Federal Reserve, they now say we owe that money. So the money we owe is the same money that's been spent to destroy us. You better believe they're probably laughing all the way to the bank. And yes, that pun was intended. Laughing all the way to the bank. They control the money. So they want to cede control of the United States over to these United Nations they control. And again, I back up another article here where I started out in the beginning, but a different website. It's time for the elites to rise up against the ignorant masses. I went over that earlier in this video, but this is a different document. Mr. Trump is very angry at the disrespect of the masses have for the banker and the bureaucratic elite. He's upset that we're upset that they created World War I and World War II and 9/11 and crashed the system 8 times, making everybody broke and poor, and trying to resist their legislation and laws to take away guns and our rights and our property, and worship the devil, the temple of Baal. He's upset. How dare we ignorant masses resist. Another document on the Council of Foreign Relations to end the sovereignty, freedom, turn over control of the United Nations to control of the United States over to the United Nations and all the other countries in the world. So I collected and read all this stuff. Meanwhile, now that we know what they're doing, lawmakers advance gun control measures in response to San Bernardino massacre. So a friend of mine who lives in Orlando, Florida, Brian, sent me an email today in response to a video we were watching and said he believes from his research that the Orlando mass shooting in the gay bar was all a orchestrated event. So San Bernardino seems to be. Sandy Hook was clearly one from all the evidence I've seen there. Boston bombing seems to be the same situation. They're always having drills while they have these events. And Boston bombing happened at 666 Boylston Street. Just more evidence of this satanic nature of all of this. So in this document, lawmakers advance gun control measures in response to San Bernardino massacre. And we know with the Black Lives Matter, they were trying to get that Day of Rage organized in 37 major cities. And then the hacked emails from the leader of the Black Lives Matter, they were trying to ship in thousands of people by bus and thousands of people by driving at the Republican convention and the Democratic convention to create some kind of mass riots and hysteria so they could have martial law and suspend the presidential elections. So those things said. 4 months after the San Bernardino mass shooting, state lawmakers on Tuesday gave initial approval to 5 gun control bills. So here you are in Congress, House of Representatives, the Senate, whatever. And you create one of these events like the San Bernardino, Orlando, Sandy Hook. And you're arguing your case and you're part of the Luciferic, satanic, New World Order, New Age people. And you're telling all those legislators that they need to approve this bill because of the citizens out there are insane. We need to disarm them too, because they're not happy that we're bringing them this Baal worship and trying to destroy Christianity. I can just wonder what some of them conversations would be like. And of course, most of those people are in cahoots anyway, so they wouldn't be in those positions. They've infiltrated the electric election process, electorate, for the last 100 years, and probably nobody of an honest, decent nature, not too many people are up there now. And if you do get in their way, like President John Kennedy, they'll just shoot you. Right in Delaney Plaza, which is a Masonic location. Delaney Plaza, go look it up. The Senate panel also approved a bill by Senator Lori Hancock, Democrat Berkeley, that would ban the possession of ammunition magazines holding more than 10 rounds. Meanwhile, they got 450 hollow point bullets that go in your body a small hole and blow the whole back of your back out or your head out. Shoot you here and the whole back of your head's gone. So disarm the people, and here's another commenter from a person on that article. So I see plenty more gun laws from these idiots in the California legislature, all targeting the law-abiding citizen, but not one gun law targeting the criminal. All right, another person says here, the gun at my side means I cannot be forced, only persuaded. I don't carry it because I'm afraid, but because it enables me to be unafraid. It doesn't limit the actions of those who would interact with me through reason, only the actions of those who would do so by force. So clearly, in my opinion, they want to bring about the New Age, the New World Order, and they're using global warming, and they're trying to divide and conquer society with the decadent, perverted, homosexual sodomy, pedophilia, women raping, child raping legislations, making all that stuff, I guess, okay. And when people resist, they don't want people to be armed. It's all some kind of Luciferic religion. And according to the Georgia USA Guidestones, put there by R.C. Christian, means Rosie Crucian to me, they want to minimize the world population to 500 million. And since the 1960s and 70s, I have many books that were published, a report from Iron Mountain and many others I've shown in my videos, that they were seriously preoccupied back in 1965, 66, 67, 71, 72, 73, preoccupied with population. They wanted to get rid of a lot of people. They said in the report to Iron Mountain, prior to nuclear weapons, they used war to reduce their populations and get rid of unwanted people. But now they have nuclear weapons. They were afraid they wouldn't have a way to control the people and get them patriotic to hate those people in that country and those people in that country to hate the people in this country and fight each other, while these elites were probably laughing at these big banquets, thinking how foolish the citizens were, killing each other. Some evil beings in control of our world. All right, if we follow the same logic, if we apply the same flawed logic to cars, car deaths are way higher than gun deaths. Many more people die from driving cars, being hit by cars, leaving babies in a car. Over 85,000 people die each year related to drunk driving in a car and simply being a passenger in a car. So it's a huge, only a couple thousand of people get shot with guns, and some of those are defense, and some are accidents, and a lot of it's interracial, not interracial, but a bad portion of it is in black communities like in Chicago, the lower income areas where the crime is prevalent. So I don't think effectively at large out there, generally speaking, the gun thing and all these crazies shootings seem like they're fabricated mind control situations. Even some black people have spoken out about it, about the hypocrisy of the whole thing, when a lot of that is black on black shootings. We should be trying to focus on solving the problems in those communities, in my opinion. But meanwhile, they're over there with those planes and helicopters machine gunning to death all those people in the Middle East, saying that they're fighting the Islamic State, when Israel has plans for a greater Israel all the way from the Euphrates River to the Nile, having a country half the size of the United States. And they have nukes and something called the Samson option, which says that if anybody tries to stop them in their world domination plans, I suppose, that they will let loose those nukes and take down all the cities of the world in a flaming inferno. Samson option. All right, our fathers, founding fathers, knew the dangers of an unarmed populace, unarmed. There are numerous quotes by several of our country's founders expressing such concerns. Prior to the Revolutionary War, in the beginning of the war, the soldiers of King George attempted to seize the armories in an attempt to limit the effectiveness of the U.S. militias. So we know why they want to disarm the people. They got a plan. And part of that is Operation Summer of Chaos that I started out this article with. So they hacked into the emails. And more propaganda about guns. Facts don't matter to gun fans. They love their weapons. Love is blind. Can you believe this? To the editor, love is blind. So when it comes to rational gun control, it might be helpful to realize that those who oppose it is often truly, madly, deeply in love with their guns. Now, who the heck? I have a weapon. I'm not in love with my weapon. Shotgun. So this stuff is propaganda. Any suggestion that these potentially deadly weapons of their affection might be anything less than wonderful will be met with the same anger and denial you would encounter suggesting their lover might be a floozy, spouse a rageaholic, or a child a delinquent. Gun love is blind. That's a real problem. Alright, George Skelton cites Dallas in dismissing the Declaration. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. To the editor, Edward Allen, he killed 7 people at Cal State Fullerton in 1976. He stopped shooting when he ran out of bullets. There's no telling how many he would have killed if he'd had access to detachable magazines. What more proof do we need to ban detachable magazines and guns that hold more than 10 bullets? So clearly they want to weaken we the citizens' ability to protect ourselves and our nation and our cities and our towns and our friends and our neighbors and family. It's not so much a love affair with guns as it is a love affair with freedom. It's a love affair that says a small woman can tell a brute to get away from her and make it stick. I am past 80 and am always armed with an easily concealed Colt 1911, which I hope I will never have to use. Another guy goes, amen. Taxation, confiscation, registration. The left-wingers' dream in establishing a social state. The love affair you speak of is not with the gun but with freedom. The gun only helped to ensure that freedom, something that is very foreign to most liberals. Alright, and of course this stuff here just keeps getting crazy. So I'm checking my emails, just logging on the computer, and I have to see this. Do I really have to see that? I mean, they're putting this stuff right in our face. We know about the Temple of Baal and the Luciferic agenda. So principal post gay people must be put to death in the wake of Orlando's shooting. And it's not what the principal said at all. He's quoting something that was written. It was just over a month ago that 49 people were killed in the gay bar in Orlando. The email I got from a friend of mine who lives in Orlando said it seems like it was another setup, propaganda, or a mind control situation. The day after the tragedy, in the hope of reminding my personal network of the love in the world by sharing more photos of gay couples kissing, I posted this photograph of my husband and partner of 13 years. And again, is it really necessary for us to have to see this stuff? I mean, even if we see a guy and a girl doing this or something, don't people usually say, go get a room? I mean, it's just a social norm. But this is, to me, when I see a picture like that, it's my natural instincts just thinks how repugnant it is. It's just not normal. It isn't, and I know this is a cliche, but it isn't Adam and Steve in the Bible, it's Adam and Eve. And it says in the Bible, and I printed out a bunch of references. I got them right here. I'll go through that next. Where God of the Bible they're trying to destroy and call Christians haters and bigots. But God, the spiritual realm, we're all spiritual beings, And apparently, Saul Alinsky, who wrote Rules for Radicals, Hillary's mentor, in the dedication page right in front of the book, he dedicates the book to Lucifer the Revolutionary in his Revolution in Heaven, where him and a third of the angels were cast out. And apparently wherever he was cast out to, he had his own kingdom. He was a leader. So apparently that revolution in heaven, according to Saul Alinsky in his book, I saw this on a video, and I had the book. I didn't believe this was in there. It's in the dedication page. I read it this morning. This is the mentor for Hillary. And lest we forget, Larry Nichols with Alex Jones and Lisa Haven and other talk show hosts says that they were concerned about Hillary going to Vegas to witches conventions and the public finding out. So all this stuff that your natural instincts tells you is wrong, and the Bible says it's wrong, and they're definitely attacking with this New Age material decency, social norms. Alright, so anyways, shortly after I posted the picture, a man named Steve, who happens to be the principal of a school in Florida, allegedly saw the two men kissing. And apparently Kenny typed in something on the blog, go, go, go. So this principal, like me, just thinks that it's just not normal. And I don't care what people do. I've never been against gay people. But it doesn't have to be right out in our faces, in the children's faces, and in the cartoons. And the teaching showing homosexual films to children in 6th and 7th grade. It's not right. But there's a bigger agenda. It's a battle between good and evil. So which one do you think is good and which one do you think is evil? They would have us believe that God and Jesus were actually the evil ones. God with his 10 commandments saying don't commit adultery, don't steal, and don't murder, don't bear false witness, don't covet what other people have. Only one God, don't worship idols, don't take God's name in vain, obey the Sabbath, and honor thy mother and father. Apparently, all hateful things to order people what not to do, or commandments. They're not suggestions, they're commandments. And we are all sinners, lest anybody say that I am a hypocrite or something. We're all sinners. I'm a sinner. I make mistakes. I've made mistakes. There's things I've done in my past I wish I hadn't have done. We all have. But there's a difference. There's something called repenting. Trying to be better, to grow as a spiritual being in these bioelectrical bodies. This opportunity to be on earth. So we're not proud of our sins when we did things. We got angry, we said something. Maybe somebody stole something. Maybe you sex or drinking. Whatever. Lied. But we try to be better. And we talk to God and believe in God and ask for our forgiveness. And the ultimate price that was paid for our sins was when Jesus died on the cross. He knew when he was walking into that city. He mentioned he said he was going to be crucified. He knew. He was a spiritual man. He knew. And so in the Bible it says, whoever believes in Jesus will be saved. So to be hateful and try to destroy Jesus in Christianity, like that comedian Sarah Silverstein, whatever her name was, you can look it up on YouTube. It's clearly they hate Jesus. And she said if Jesus came back again, she would kill him again and again and again in an attitude like that. I'm watching that video going, oh my God. But then again, I watch 911. I go, oh my God. And I watch those helicopters machining people over there in the Middle East. I say, oh my God. And I watch the propaganda and trying to eliminate the age of consent for children with sex with men. And professors and people publishing reports that psychological reports, that it is natural for a man to be infatuated and want to have sex with children. And bestiality, apparently something was legalized in Canada. So this gay guy says, he repeated the sick comment. So the principal said, go, go, go. Apparently the sight of two men kissing engages certain people to commit mass murder. It wouldn't commit me to commit mass murder. Tell me where, as a culture, continuing to keep these images hidden too deeply behind closed doors. Photographs and imagery of two men and two women kissing should be as common and natural as people of opposing genders showing affection. If they were, there would be less hate and a lot more understanding. Snapped this one just days ago with John in Prague at the Peace Wall. So this gay guy, wants pictures of gay men kissing to be as common as men and women who might be holding hands or walking down the street. And they're intent on forcing everybody to go that way. It's not a choice. Even God gives us a choice. He gives us commandments, but he doesn't throw down thunderbolts and lightning and start killing people who break commandments. But apparently the United Nations and these New World Order people will punish and probably assassinate people who don't go along with this new sick agenda of pedophilia. And even in one book I read, it should be permissible to rape women. Apparently it's a very exciting thing to do to these people. The principal calling a gay couple sick for posting a photograph of themselves on their own social media account certainly seemed erroneous. Yet the insidious post that ultimately led me to write this column sent shivers through my mind, particularly given the timing and literally hours after the Orlando shooting. So this principle says, if a man practices homosexuality, having sex with another man as with a woman, both men have committed a detestable act. They must both be put to death, for they are guilty of a capital offense. And this is in the Bible, Leviticus 18-22. That's the Old Testament. I'm not a big fan of the Old Testament. I'm with the New Testament. And by the way, you know, the New Testament is about Jesus, Christianity. And what year is this? This is 2016. So 2016 years ago is when Jesus was born. So people, you know, the calendar everywhere tells us that Jesus was born on that date. That's what the calendar signifies. Do not practice homosexuality, having sex with another man as a woman. It is a detestable sin. So this is what the guy wrote. And when he said they must be put to death, he was quoting something that it says in the Bible. He wasn't, the principal wasn't suggesting that gay people be put to death. But this writer tries to make it that way. The title of this article tries to make people think that way. Principal posts, gay people must be put to death. That is not what it says here. It says he's quoting what it says in the Bible. Gay must be put to death. Not should be, but might be, but must be. That's what it says in the Bible. That principal was quoting that. So what I did is I went into the internet and did some homework and wanted to know more about what the Bible said on this subject. And remember, my cell phone won't let me type the word Jesus. What's with that? While Kenny is clearly not harming anyone physically with his post, and while it would be hyperbole to suggest that there was any intent to do so on Kenny's part, so this writer's acknowledging that's not what he was trying to do, but the title of the article doesn't say that. And people are short to think. Most people reading the title there would think that people want to put gay people to death. I thought about how religious doctrine was again at play, as it had been just 36 hours earlier in Orlando. So he's taken this Orlando event, which in all probability was an event, there were some mysterious things going on. Go watch the videos. But to create the propaganda, to kind of create the legislation, and to move forward with the new age and the new world order. So a little bit more on this article. Yet, if he is presented, this means Principal Kenny, with the opportunity to hire out a gay coach, will he opt for a straight coach who isn't sick? So if I was a principal and I had a coach for little boys at the basketball, absolutely I would hire a straight coach. I wouldn't hire a womanizer coach to mentor the girls basketball team. I'd have to do a background check and make sure somebody was decent and honorable and no criminal record. If a pro-LGBT speaker wants to conduct an empowering presentation, to the student body about sexual orientation, what decision would Kenny make about someone who must be put to death? How would a student or teacher feel about coming out in that school? So all this stuff is all meant to mess with our heads. Bible verses about sodomy. This is important. Not particularly pleased to have this conversation, but it's important. Years ago, when I had my sailboat living by the beach, I dated a nurse, and she had nurses friends, as you can imagine, at the hospital, so I knew a lot of nurses. And they would tell me about some of the horrific things that happened in the emergency room related to sex. But here we go. Anal to anus sex should not even be done if it's in marriage and it's dangerous. The anus has a lot of bacteria, and with anal sex there is a greater chance of having anal cancer. Is sodomy a sin? Yes, sodomy is homosexuality, and God never intended for a penis to go inside an anus. And I suppose it's a big problem because your tubes inside your rectum weren't designed for that kind of penetration. And you break the walls. I don't even want to talk about it. One girl I know had to have serious surgery. Anyways, concerning homosexuality, this one brought hell out of heaven on Sodom. There's a book here about that. I looked this stuff up. As much as I said, this is a detestable conversation. I'm ending this video now in a minute. It is a sin against nature. And to me, it's just logical that a man would be with a woman and they would have a baby. And if people want to get fixed and not have children and have sexual relations, fine. I am aware that STDs, sex-related diseases, are way on the increase. So this just open sex world is not healthy for people anyways. Whether it's AIDS or any of these other STDs, gonorrhea. So a little common sense and self-discipline is probably would go a long ways for people's physical and mental health. But back to this document. It is a sin against nature. Well, again, it's natural for me to think that a man and woman would go together. It's just like a triangle peg goes in a triangle hole when you're a little child, and the round peg goes in the round hole, and the square peg goes in the square hole. It's logic. The word sodomy comes from Sodom and Gomorrah, and God destroyed the city because of homosexuality, and that's in Genesis 8:20 to 21. And the Lord said, because of the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know. Sex is supposed to be natural within marriage. While sex positions within marriage do not matter, it is clear that the scriptures, through these scriptures, that God condemns sodomy. So again, I don't think that part of the body was designed for that, besides the bacteria, and it is a place for the waste to go into the toilet, not a sexual orifice. Concerning homosexuality, this one brought hell out of heaven of Sodom. America is every bit as sin-sick as Sodom and Gomorrah ever were. We're rotting from within. And this is all promoted, even with Rabbi Marvin Antelman in his 2 books, To Eliminate the Opate. Opate means believing in God. He describes all these people into this Luciferic, Sabbatan, Frankist religion. And orgies and sick sex is part of their religion with the Bohemian Grove. And a lot of it, as I've gone over in this video and other videos. They want to do the opposite. Even Aleister Crowley, known as the evilest man alive, who wrote the Book of the Law, do as thou wilt. I keep saying the 10 Commandments are with God and Jesus, and the evil forces, Aleister Crowley, Lucifer, Satanism, Baal, are the opposite of the 10 Commandments. So they believe you can kill, you can do adultery, you can do pedophilia, you can rape women. And this was in Aleister Crowley's material. And if you put Aleister Crowley in a computer, in a numerology calculator, it's 666. And the mark of the beast. So Genesis 19:4-7. Before they could lie down, all the men of Sodom and on the outskirts, both young and old, surrounded the house. So God sent 2 angels to Sodom. And all the people in town, they look like men. They called out to Lot and asked, "Where are the men who came to visit you tonight? Bring them out so we can have sex with them." Lot went outside to them, shut the door behind him, and said, "I urge you, my brothers, don't do such a wicked thing." Well, anyways, the angels said, "Don't worry about it, but leave the city tomorrow," in Genesis 19:12-13, because God is going to destroy the city. And apparently Lot's, don't look back, you'll turn into a pillar of salt or get destroyed. And Lot's wife did look back and got destroyed. Alright, Peter 2-6-10 in the Bible. Later, God condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and turned them into heaps of ashes. He made them an example of what will happen to ungodly people. And again, we're all sinners, everybody. And we try to do better and not do evil things. And if we believe in Jesus, our sins will be forgiven and we will be saved. It's paramount that people get that. This new world that's coming, where they're trying to disarm everybody and put up these temples to the devil everywhere, is real. And they want to have this day of rage with Black Lives Matter and organizing by busloads, as these hacked emails and Twitter accounts show, that the administrations, the people who rule our world, control things, want to organize more of these riots and uprisings to bring about a revolution, like in Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, Hillary Clinton's mentor when she was in college, whose dedication to the book is to Lucifer, the first revolutionary who was kicked out of heaven with 1/3 of angels. And hence Lucifer said it was worth it that it happened. I've got my own kingdom now. Jude 1.7. So also Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighboring towns, since they indulge in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire in a way similar to these angels, are now displayed as an example by suffering the punishment of eternal fire. God uses the word sodomite to refer to homosexuals. So I just looked up what does it say in the Bible about homosexuality, and these documents came up if you want to go look it up. There's the title you can look up. Bible verses about sodomy. So they do want to make talking about Jesus illegal, probably confiscate Bibles. They don't want people to know what God said. Kings 14-24, and there were also Sodomites in the land, and they did according to all the abominations of the nations, and the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. Tel Aviv over there in Israel now, two major cities in Israel, Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. But apparently Tel Aviv is the #1 vacation spot for homosexuals. So a Jewish person can't marry a non-Jewish person, but a Jewish person can have homosexual affairs with a Gentile, non-Jew, when they go to Tel Aviv. Some really sick thinking here. Isaiah 3-8-9, Isaiah 3:8-9. They parade their sin around like Sodom. They don't even try to hide it. That's what it says here in the Bible. It says here, for Jerusalem has stumbled in the Bible, and Judah has fallen, because what they say and do opposes the Lord. They keep defying him. The expression on their faces give them away. They parade their sin around like Sodom. They don't even try to hide it. How horrible will it be for them, because they have brought disaster on themselves. Homosexuality is a sin. Leviticus here it says, if a man has sexual relations with another male as he would with a woman, both have committed a repulsive act. Corinthians 6.9, don't you know that the unrighteous will not inherit God's kingdom? Do not be deceived. No sexual immorality, adulterers, and anyone practicing homosexuality. Leviticus 18:22, you shall not lie with a male as with a woman, it is an abomination. Romans 1.25-27, they exchanged God's truth for a lie, and worshipped and served the creation rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. For this reason, God delivered them to degrading passions, as their females exchanged their natural sexual function for one that is unnatural. In the same way, males have abandoned their natural sexual function toward females and burned with lust towards one another. Males committed indecent acts with males and received with themselves the appropriate penalty for their perversion. And again, there's more here, reminders. The penis was never intended to go into the anus. The penis was intended to go inside the vagina. Common sense. So it's an unnatural thing. It's not the way nature designed it. And Galatians 5-24. Now those who belong to Christ have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Now the actions of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, promiscuity. Here's something positive here. There is hope for Sodomites. And anybody who's sinned, anybody who's made mistakes. I've made mistakes. If they turn from their sins, trust in Christ alone for salvation. Christ died to take away your chains and set you free. So this didn't exclude anybody. All of us can change. And one last page. John 3-16, King James Version. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. John 3-16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. So with that said, I appreciate you watching my video. My whole point of this video is there seems to be some orchestrated propaganda coming out of the United Nations and the other evil elites, and yes, I call them evil, for the ones who want to destroy Christianity and bring a more decadent perverted social reality that many people are rejecting and being punished for. And they apparently want to cede control of the United States over to the United Nations, which is into the occult with the symbolism in the meditation room and other symbols created by these Zionist Jewish folks who want to rule the world from Mount Zion. That's what Zionism means. And God-fearing Orthodox Jewish people, if you go on Yahoo image search, the good Jews have posters and books and trying to warn the rest of us. Even Jewish author Henry Mackal, PhD in Canada, who wrote the book Illuminati, The Cult That Hijacked the World. Rabbi Marvin Entelman, and so many other books. Jack Bernstein, the American Jew who moved to Israel, tells all. Professor Higger in The Jewish Utopia makes no bones about what they think of us and what they want to do to us, and it's horrific. The Protocols of Zion say what they want to do to us. It's horrific. They control Hollywood. They control the pornographic industry. They control movie theater industry, pawn shops, banks, and liquor businesses and everything else. And apparently have networked all the companies into one gigantic beast organization. And now they want to control the world when they're bringing us all these evils and wars. What's it going to take for people to get it? Rick Miracle reporting.